Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking the scandalous, highly consequential lives of Britain's most peculiar royal couple. We're talking about King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra. These two were absolute polar opposites, yet somehow, together, they presided over the absolute peak of the British Empire. And to kick things off, we are going to start with a literal bang. Okay, picture this. It's April 4th, 1900, in Brussels. The Prince and Princess of Wales are boarding a train when suddenly a 15-year-old anarchist named Jean-Baptiste Thibodeau fires two pistol shots straight into their coach. The bullets completely shatter the window, and get this, one of them passes right between the royal couple. Now, thankfully, nobody was hurt, but the really wild part? This terrifying assassination attempt actually brought the estranged husband and wife closer together just months before they'd finally take the British throne. It was a super rare moment of unity in a marriage that was, frankly, completely defined by chaos.
Part 1. The Royal Odd Couple, a Clash of Personalities.
To really grasp how their incredibly eventful marriage shaped the geopolitical map of Europe right before World War I, we have to look at who they were as individuals. And the contrast is just mind-blowing. On one hand, you have Edward, famously known as the Playboy heir. He was deeply indulgent, super impatient, and constantly tangled in massive public scandals. Then you have Alexandra, the steady consort. She was steadfast, austere, and absolutely beloved by the British public. She essentially acted as the moral anchor for the monarchy's reputation, while her husband was out making headlines for, well, all the wrong reasons. They were literally a royal odd couple.
Part 2. The Playboy Heir, a Lifetime in Waiting.
So Edward's situation was pretty unique. Born in 1841, his career path was literally set from day one. But his mother, Queen Victoria, ended up reigning for over 60 years. After the tragic death of her husband, Prince Albert, in 1861, a death she actually blamed on the stress of Edward's early romantic scandals, she completely locked her son out of any real political power. She wouldn't even let him look at important state papers until he was 51 years old. He waited 59 years to become king. I mean, imagine waiting until you're essentially a senior citizen to start your very first real job. And here's the crucial point. All of that idle time, it led to some unprecedented royal scandals. Edward had to occupy his time somehow, so he dove headfirst into excessive parties, gambling, and affairs. It got so bad that he was shockingly subpoenaed in the 1870 Mordaunt divorce trial. An heir to the throne testifying in a divorce court? Totally unheard of. Later on, he got caught up in the 1891 Tranby Croft baccarat cheating scandal. Plus, he maintained dozens of long-term mistresses, including the famous actress Lily Langtry. This behavior absolutely infuriated Queen Victoria and did serious damage to the monarchy's public image. People were even calling for a republic.
Part 3. The Steadfast Princess, from Denmark to the Empire.
Now, Alexandra's backstory is just incredible. She wasn't born into immense wealth at all. She actually came from a minor, pretty austere royal family in Denmark, living in a relatively modest place called the Yellow Palace in Copenhagen. But then, through this really complex series of succession events, her father was unexpectedly bumped up to the Danish throne. Almost overnight, her family went from minor nobility to immense prominence across Europe, and she was picked to marry the heir to the most powerful empire on earth. Talk about absolute geopolitical whiplash. But making it to the top definitely didn't make her life easy. After a really difficult pregnancy in 1867, she contracted rheumatic fever. This left her with a permanent limp and increasing deafness that lasted her entire life. And worst of all, she had to endure the deeply agonizing deaths of two of her sons, including her eldest, Prince Eddie. Yet despite these brutal personal tragedies and the very public humiliation of her husband's affairs, she maintained this incredible public grace. The big takeaway here is how she channeled her pain into purpose. She became a huge champion for British healthcare, most famously pushing to bring the Finsen lamp to London hospitals to treat lupus. She was truly a pioneer in royal philanthropy.
Part 4. Royal Diplomacy and Drama. Geopolitics as a Family Feud.
You know, Edward was often called the uncle of Europe. And when you look at it, the nickname is spot on. Their family tree was basically the map of European power. Tsar Nicholas II of Russia? That's a nephew. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany? Also a nephew. The King of Greece was Alexandra's brother, and the King of Norway was her son-in-law. Once you realize that the shifting global alliances of the early 20th century were essentially decided by a massive high-stakes family drama, the history of this whole era suddenly takes on a completely new dimension.
Alexandra was sharp, like incredibly sharp. And man, she held a grudge. Her deep hatred for Prussia started way back in 1864 when German armies invaded her Danish homeland, and she never ever forgave them. She actually referred to her own German nephew, Kaiser Wilhelm II, as inwardly our enemy. It just shows how perfectly she foresaw the threat he posed. For decades, she was practically sounding the alarm to British politicians about German expansionism. So, despite basically living separate personal lives, the one thing Edward and Alexandra totally agreed on was their anti-German bias. And this shared feeling completely rewired British foreign policy. You've got Alexandra pulling for Russia since her sister was the empress there, and then you have Edward with his profound love for France and his personal disdain for his bombastic nephew, Kaiser Wilhelm. Together, they pushed Britain away from its German cousins and steered it straight toward a French and Russian alliance. It's just fascinating how deeply personal family beefs can literally alter international relations.
Part 5. The Edwardian Era. The Playboy becomes king. So when Queen Victoria finally passes in 1901, the Playboy gets his shot. And surprisingly, he was incredibly effective on the world stage. He took all that immense charm he'd honed at endless parties and his genuine love for travel, and he used it to personally build critical alliances. In 1903, he visits Paris. The French crowds are super cold to him at first, but he turns on the charm, completely wins them over, and paves the way for the critical 1904 Entente Cordiale with France. He also backed the 1907 Anglo-Russian Entente. In just a handful of years, he pulled Britain out of diplomatic isolation and secured peace during a remarkably tense decade. But hey, the indulgences definitely didn't stop. 12. That is the number of courses King Edward consumed for dinner. Every single day. He was absolutely untamed when it came to extreme luxury. We are talking dozens of oysters, pheasants stuffed with truffles, frogs' legs, and that's right after polishing off platefuls of bacon and haddock for breakfast. The Playboy hadn't disappeared at all. He just got a way better title. Part 6. A complicated legacy. The eve of war. Eventually, Edward's health, completely wrecked by his huge appetite and heavy smoking, finally failed him. He passed away from bronchitis on May 6, 1910. And his funeral? It was an absolute spectacle. 9 European monarchs rode side by side. Looking back, that massive gathering was basically the final peaceful family reunion of all the royal cousins, before the entire continent just erupted into violence. It was the definitive, highly somber end of an era. And the aftermath is profoundly tragic. Just 4 years later, World War I breaks out, and that vast European family tree literally tears itself to pieces. Yes, the alliances Edward and Alexandra built helped protect Britain, but the personal cost was unimaginable. Queen Alexandra had to live to see German Zeppelins bomb her own beloved country home at Sandringham. And even more horrifying, she had to watch from afar as her Russian relatives, Tsar Nicholas II and his entire family, were executed in 1918. Her absolute worst warnings had come true, and the fallout wiped out her extended family. So, when we look back at the wildly intertwined lives of this royal odd couple, we're left pondering this really fascinating duality. The choices they made quite literally laid the groundwork for the modern world. But it leaves us with a huge question. Did his diplomatic charm actually make him a great statesman? Or was he merely a decadent playboy who just happened to be in the right place at the right time? It's a pretty stark reminder of how deeply personal flaws and stubborn family grudges can steer the fate of entire empires. Thanks so much for joining us.